I lead the municipal boundary review program as well as the plat review program with the department.
And I'm Eric Schmidtke. I work in the municipal boundary review program.
And I'm David Robbie, an attorney at the department's Division of Legal Services.
So we are here today because this public hearing was requested by the Village of Sussex, according to Wisconsin statute, which permits any person to request a hearing if the request is within 10 days following the department's receipt of a cooperative plan for review. So that did happen. So the purpose of today's hearing is to listen to testimony from the town of Lisbon and the Village of Lannon, as well as from municipal neighbors such as Sussex, area residents, and from others interested in this proposed cooperative plan. This testimony will be used to help the department apply its statutory review standards in statute 66.0307. So just so you know, this is not a court-type hearing. There's no rules of evidence, no swearing in or cross-examination of witnesses or objectives. When you talk, you're going to direct your comments to us and direct your questions to us as well. Comments, just so you know, if you don't want to testify verbally, we will accept comments and written testimony for 10 days following the hearing. So the deadline for comments for written testimony is Monday, December 30th, 2019. You can send that to us by regular mail or you can email those comments to us as well. We will not make any decision on the proposed cooperative plan today. This is just to gather information from you. And what we're going to do is we're going to take periodic breaks, as you can see from the agenda, that we'll take comments from the interested parties first. We'll take any testimony. We'll take a break. We'll come back, take any more testimony. But we will be here until 7 p.m. So once you've testified, you're not required to stay, but we have to stay here until 7 p.m. So you know that. So handouts, they are in the back table there. We have an agenda. And on that agenda, you see we're going to hear from the communities of Lisbon-Lannon and Sussex, and then from any individuals desiring to speak. We also have a cooperative plan process flow chart. So you can kind of see on that flow chart where we are in the process. And, you know, you see that we're at the end of the process, so we must issue, the department here, we must issue a decision within 90 days, which in this case will be no later than January 30th. So that is when our decision will be out, is no later than January 30th. What decisions we can make, we can approve the cooperative plan, deny it, or return it to the communities with recommended changes. The other thing on the back table are the statutory standards. So that handout shows the specific statutory criteria that we examine the cooperative plan against during our review. Testimony and comments, which closely relate to these statutory review criteria, are going to be the most relevant for us and helpful to us because that's what we're looking at in making our determination. For those of you back there, we do have the hearing registration slips. If you'd like to present testimony, please fill out a hearing registration slip and give it to me. This helps us manage our time as well as keep track of who has testified. And because this public hearing is being recorded by a court reporter, when you testify, please be sure to spell your name, and please be mindful when you are speaking, speak clearly so that your comments may be recorded. So I'm a fast talker. Don't talk any faster than me because you need to be able to keep up. So before we get into introductions, is there anyone who needs to leave early that we should get on and have them speak early in the process? All right, then I would like to have the town of Lisbon introduce themselves. Gina, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Gina Gresh. I'm the Town of Lisbon Administrator. Today we have with us our Town Attorney Jim Hammes, and we have Supervisor Becky Klotecker in the field, and our Chairman Joe Osterman with us.
Thank you. Village of Lannon, if you'd like to introduce yourselves. And if you need those names spelled, please let me know. Okay.
Tom Goodix, Village of Lannon President. We have Patrick Eads, Janice Mayer Smith, and also Ben Woods, the Village Engineer.
And then Village of Sussex?
Jeremy Smith, the Village Administrator. We have the Village President, Rick Guest, and we have the Village Attorney,
All right, thank you. So according to the agenda, what we're going to do is we are going to hear a summary of the proposed cooperative plan by Lisbon-Lannon. So if you'd like to start.
Thank you, David. James Amerson, one of the attorneys for the town of Lisbon. We've submitted a cooperative plan for your review and consideration. The primary purpose of which is to lay out a process of procedure where Lisbon and Lannon can and will work cooperatively to solve a groundwater situation. Basically, either set up a municipal water system in Lisbon, which is interconnected with Lannon, or join with Lannon on a joint system. Now, which of those alternatives, or possibly even a third alternative with another municipality would get involved, which of those ultimately will take place depends a lot on the Public Service Commission approval. So what we're doing with this cooperative plan, and what we're attempting to do, is to, by commitment, believe that we will jointly pool our resources to study these two alternatives and come up with a solution that's acceptable to both municipalities. Ben Wood is the engineer for the village and has worked for the Strand Associates. Will in a few minutes give you a little power presentation, PowerPoint, that lays out a lot more of the issues. I just want to say, I would anticipate that we'll end up being required to submit a revised plan to address some of the issues. For example, if you look at Lannon, it's comprised of about 3¼ square miles. It's bordered on Town Line Road, and I've got a map which is Exhibit C, but you can pass it out. Orienting yourselves. But Town Line Road on this map is the boundary line between Sussex, between Lannon and the town of Lisbon. That's been the border since the town of Menominee Falls and the town of Lisbon were created by the legislature, 150, 160 years ago. There's never been any transfer of lands from Lisbon to Lannon. Lannon was incorporated out of the town of Menominee Falls at that time, and Lannon was actually bigger than Sussex and everybody put together. But today, Lannon has about 1,100 residents. It's surrounded on 3 sides by Menominee Falls, and it borders Town Line Road in town of Lisbon. Menominee Falls is a village that is the original town, with the exception of Lannon, plus Butler, which is even smaller than Lannon on the other side. So, as you know, what happened in the late 50s, Menominee Falls and Berlin and Cedardale incorporated, and so you end up with these large townships, large villages that really were the original townships. There are a lot of issues in this area because of quarries, high bedrock, which impacts groundwater. Wells become contaminated because of blasting activities, or which people say it's blasting activities, the quarries say no, it's not, it's something else. But the fact of the matter is, there's a need for a municipal water system in this area. Lannon has a municipal water system, but it's under, and again, Ben Wood, I don't want to explain this in more detail, but it's under increasing pressure from the pressure, not the right word, but scrutiny from the Public Service Commission to find an alternative solution because they only have a single water system, there's no interconnection. Now, they're surrounded by Menominee Falls, but the problem is that a lot of Menominee Falls is in the Lake Michigan water diversion program. So you can't, there are limitations of how those systems can be connected. About, I don't know, it's 20 years ago almost already, there was an interceptor, a sewer interceptor that was constructed by Lannon. And if you look on this map, it runs down from Lannon to along Town Line Road down to B and then into the village of Sussex. That interceptor system was jointly paid for by Town of Lisbon, Police Sanitary District in the town, the Village of Niagara Falls, the Village of Sussex, and the Village of Lannon. And for example, on here you'll see it's a residential area. It's actually a mobile home park, Willow Springs Mobile Home Park. That was connected into that Lannon sector, and sewage is sanitary sewage is provided them, but no water. A number of years ago, the town purchased what's known as the Leeds property. L-I-E-D, Leeds was a nursery, and that's shown on the map. You'll see on your map the high school, the schools here. The Leeds property is located next to that. It's about 80 acres, and it's to be a half of roughly 45 acres. It's going to be an industrial development, and 45 is going to be a business development. So the town purchased sewer capacity in the Lannon intercept to provide sanitary sewer service to that development. We purchased capacity in the plant. But in order to put in those types of developments, you need a municipal water system. A lot of them need to be sprinkled, and because of the high bedrock and other issues there, you need a municipal water system. So the town, at the present time, is in the process of putting in a private well, getting licensed or approved through the state. But it will be constructed so that it can be converted to a public municipal well system, subject to later PSC approval and subject to the ultimate determination as to whether Lisbon creates its own water system and connects with Lannon, or whether we have a joint system. So that's what's going on. And the fact of the matter is that in order to, by the way, the town has created a TIF district for this Leeds property. We are in the process of working on closing the first transaction, which would put the first industrial building in there, which would be available for use sometime next summer. So we're going ahead with the private water system with the idea that that will be connected into or become a part of the overall larger water system that we're talking about here. So we have both municipalities need to address municipal water, and it seems that a joint cooperative agreement to find a way to do that together will save everyone money and provide better water service to the residents. The agreement doesn't talk about a lot of other shared services, and maybe we could have explained that in greater detail. Because Lannon is small, 1,100 people, surrounded by Menominee Falls, there are a lot of municipal services that are contracted with Menominee Falls. Snow plowing, I think, fire protection, right? All of those services are already provided, so it's really now, a function of this particular shared service agreement. They're already taken care of, and it just would work. And again, maybe we could be a little bit more detailed and explain that, and we will do that in the revised plan. But the main purpose of this is to find a cooperative solution to a groundwater problem at the lowest possible cost, and look at different alternatives and serve the residents of both communities. So, if you would explain what the work he's done on that, because as you notice under the part of the agreement, we're committing to reimburse Lannon for $100,000 worth of costs that they've already incurred. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Well, first, my introduction. My name is Ben Wood. I am with an engineering firm, Strand and Associates, and we're the village engineer for the Village of Lannon. I have a short presentation to discuss the Lannon-Lisbon Joint Water Study and how that explores options for long-term resiliency. What I'll cover today in this presentation is Lannon's need for rapid water expansion, Lannon's need for redundant water supply, Lannon's historic water system planning, how the Great Lakes Compact has implications on Lannon's historic water system planning, and wrap up with Lannon must explore second source alternatives. It's about 10 slides, 10 to 15 minutes to get through this. So first of all, Lannon's need for rapid water expansion. So Lannon, as a community, has a village-wide sanitary sewer system. It has an existing water system with so in October of 2018, Lannon declared a public health emergency in response to the Lannon Elementary School, which is part of the Sussex-Hamilton School District located within the village of Lannon, because their private well that was serving the school tested positive for E. coli multiple times. So they requested a municipal water service extension. And Lannon did that under the declared public health emergency. That issue was brought to light because the elementary school does pretty frequent testing as required by DNR of their private well. News of that spread to neighbors and several residences tested their private wells. The village held a public meeting in October of 2018 and encouraged people to get their wells tested and submit those results to the Waukesha County Public Health Department. 55% of all tested private wells, as reported to Waukesha County Health Department, were either positive for coliform or E. coli. Since the fall of 2018, 65 wells were tested, 36 were positive for coliform, and 13 of those were positive for E. coli. At the time, the Waukesha County Health Department indicated to me that on an annual basis throughout the entire county, they see approximately 4 positive E. coli tested wells in any given year, and Lannon had 13. They were rather alarmed. The village board kind of commissioned a water system study to analyze the viability and really the cheapest option possible to extend municipal water to the areas of town that were suffering from these circumstances. Municipal water was extended to Lannon Elementary in the summer of 2019, and municipal water expansion is currently proposed, and if approved, would target to be in place by the end of 2020 to the affected private well owners. Lannon's need for redundant supply. Lannon has, again, a municipal water system. It's comprised of one well that has, it's in the shallow aquifer. It's a 250 gallon per minute well, and a reservoir that is 160,000 gallons. So currently, when it was first installed, that was considered adequate by DNR because of the low number of customers that we have. DNR code NR 811-26 requires that water systems have redundant sources of supply. Currently, Lannon does not. So when we take a look at, from an engineering perspective, analyzing how much water a community needs, you look at how much water the community can provide when their largest pumping unit is out of service. Well, currently, Lannon only has one, so you conduct this analysis with that well out of service, and basically all of the capacity in the system comes from the 160,000 gallon reservoir. So currently the 2019 demand in the system is 50 gallons a minute, but if that were gone, Lannon would need to have true redundancy right now in 2019, another 50 gallons per minute of supply. By 2024, that amount is projected to be 188, just shy of 200 gallons per minute. To date, DNR has allowed Lannon to continue with this single source of supply because they know, because of our low number of customers, that we can't exactly afford to build a second source of supply, and because we have sufficient capacity in the reservoir that if the current well were to go out of service, we could provide 2 days, slightly more than 2 days worth of water supply out of that reservoir. If it got beyond 2 days, then the system would be drained. Continuing to talk about Lannon's need for redundant supply, it is projected that if we build out the water system to provide municipal water to the private wells that are currently contaminated with coliform and E. coli, the number of customers in Lannon would jump from its current 142 to approximately 317 by the end of next year. Most connections are residents that are earning below the state median household income, therefore making it even more prudent that the village seek an economically feasible alternative to help these residents. Strength, again, at the board's direction, completed a water system study in 2019 that identified several alternatives for the land and water utility moving forward to address this need for a redundant source of supply. That included what was always historically assumed to be the default option, alternative A, which would be an interconnection with the village of Menominee Falls. Utility ownership is a complicated issue that requires a lot of Public Service Commission input and analysis, so initially it was contemplated that we would start with an emergency interconnection. Some of the troubles with that are that Menominee Falls operates at a different hydraulic gradient, essentially surface pressure, than what would be optimal for the village of Lannon. And there are also Great Lakes compact issues that would limit the ability of Menominee Falls to have an interconnection with the village of Lannon. I'll get into that a little bit on the following slides. Alternative B was a joint Menominee Falls combined system, where, if we separate some well facilities from those Menominee Falls, then the village of Menominee Falls and the village of Lannon could have expanded lone water districts. Alternative C can interconnect with the village of Sussex. While that's farther away, there are no Great Lakes compact issues. Alternative D, a combined system with the town of Lisbon, which is the subject of the study that's identified in this intermunicipal agreement. And redundancy would kind of be inherently gained by the well that Mr. Hammis indicated is planned to be built to serve the Leeds property within the town of Lisbon. Alternative E would be for the village of Lannon to build out its own system, drill a deep well, which would be fairly expensive, approximately $2.5 million for a deep well with gradient treatment. All of these alternatives were proposed as part of the water system study, again completed earlier this year. This map right here shows the greater area with the village of Lannon being the smaller shapes area within this yellow boundary. Can everyone see my mouse okay? Otherwise I can use the lane in the corner here. So this is the village of Lannon right here. The purple and blue areas are the water service area of the village of Sussex. The darker blue area is water service area in Menominee Falls. That's part of the surface water system where they purchase water from Milwaukee Water Works. The green area here is part of the Menominee Falls groundwater supply system. That system is served by a total of 3 wells. The light blue areas are the portions of Lannon that are currently on land and municipal water. Now there's a black line here that's critically important. This is the Great Lakes Basin Divide. All the water on the east of that line flows toward Lake Michigan. All the surface water on the west side of that line ultimately flows toward the Illinois Box and the Mississippi River. The Great Lakes Compact says that any water that's taken out of this basin is considered a diversion. Those diversions are by and large prohibited without very special circumstances similar to what the city of Waukesha went through. They are defined by the Great Lakes Compact as a community that is in a straddling county. Lannon is a community that is in a straddling county, just like Waukesha. In contrast, Menominee Falls itself is a straddling community, meaning the Great Lakes Basin runs through Menominee Falls. Now, the Great Lakes Compact says that within a straddling community, only the state environmental agency, in this case the Department of Natural Resources, has to review any diversions. So the DNR is the governing entity that decides where Menominee Falls can pump their water. The Great Lakes Compact says that for communities like Waukesha or the village of Lannon that are in a straddling county but lie entirely outside of that basin, the EPA and the Council of Great Lakes Governors has to approve that diversion request after first being reviewed by the DNR. And I think most are probably familiar with the multi-year, even multi-decade struggle that the city of Waukesha has gone through to get an approval for a Great Lakes diversion. Now, Menominee Falls, as I said, their groundwater system shown in green is supplied by 3 wells, 2 of which are right here on the east side of the boundary of the basin divide line. That's critical because the Great Lakes Compact it treats surface water and groundwater the same when it comes to deciding what is inside and outside of the basin. So since all these green areas are served by largely 2 wells that are on the wrong side of the basin divide, that's considered a diversion. That is a grandfathered diversion that has been approved by the DNR. What that means is the Great Lakes Compact treats all of the water that's in these green service areas of Menominee Falls as Lake Michigan water. For that reason, Menominee Falls cannot sell its water or transfer its water, even under an emergency situation, to other municipalities, other water utilities that are outside of its own service area. The Great Lakes Compact defines an emergency interconnect not as what we would intuitively think of as a hard piped connection with a valve that you just open in emergencies. Great Lakes Compact defines it as a physically separated, you can put water in a tanker truck, drive it to your outside community, and put it into their system. Therefore, Lannon cannot interconnect with Menominee Falls, even though we are surrounded by Menominee Falls on all 3 sides, without very intense studies, approvals, multi-years of drawn-out studies, and quite frankly, Lannon doesn't have the resources or the time to pursue that. Another challenge is shown in this kind of schematic of the topography that is represented in this mapped area. Lannon is at the ground elevations in Lannon are somewhat in between the typical ground elevation in Menominee Falls and that in Sussex. Ground elevation kind of determines the appropriate water pressure or hydraulic grade elevation in a community that would be optimal to serve that community. Lannon's current hydraulic gradient that this light blue water system serves is approximately 1,065 feet. Menominee Falls, 1,030. The village of Sussex in these lighter areas is 1,080 feet. So as you can kind of pick up from that, there would also be some hydraulic challenges in an interconnection with Menominee Falls, whereas connection to Sussex or the west, at least hydraulically, would make a little more sense for the village of Lannon. This point is kind of underscored in this next graph our next map here that shows the same service area, but with the pressures that could be served by Menominee Falls elevation of 1,030 feet. All of the areas shown in red cannot be served at that elevation while maintaining DNR minimum requirements for pressure. So you can see the further that you move kind of north and west from Menominee Falls, even several areas in northwestern Menominee Falls and one in Lannon that cannot be served at that gradient. Therefore, kind of from a pure hydraulic standpoint, it makes more sense for Lannon to either build out its own system or find an alternate source of supply. The Great Lakes Compact further complicates interconnections with Menominee Falls. I covered a lot of this in the map, but two of Menominee Falls groundwater wells are inside of the basin, operating under a grandfather diversion granted by the Wisconsin DNR. Lannon is a community in a straddling county, requiring approval of all Great Lakes governors if we were to interconnect. Physically connected emergency interconnections are prohibited by the Great Lakes Compact. A similar emergency interconnection was not approved by DNR in that on Silver Spring Road, the Village of Sussex, and the Lannon water expansion must continue to plan for interconnections with neighboring communities. In summary, Lannon's water system must expand in order to address the village's public health issues. Lannon must have a redundant source of supply as dictated by DNR Code 811. DNR has indicated to us that at our next sanitary survey, which is scheduled toward the end of 2020, that they will likely cite our one single well as being a deficiency that will have to be addressed. Further investigation of a Lannon-Lisbon interconnect is prudent for Lannon. Potential benefits include redundant source of supply to each system. Lannon will explore viable options while appropriate agencies would need to approve formal projects. The next step is to study the options. Again, the water system study that Strand completed identified 5 alternatives for how Lannon could build out its system with a redundant source of supply. The next step is to start studying each of those to see what is viable and what is not viable. If it's determined that a Lannon-Lisbon interconnect is viable, DNR would have to approve all technical plans. Those approval requirements are governed by NR Code 108. Water main plans take 30 days to review. Others typically take 90 days. The Public Service Commission would have to approve an interconnect through their construction authorization process, which is dictated by Wisconsin Administrative Code 184. A basic interconnection that is not an integrated utility, but just a simple interconnection would follow the standard construction authorization review timeline, which is 6 months. To integrate utilities, where if it were truly a joint utility that was sharing water back and forth, is a 12 to 18 month review process. So that is the kind of approval process that would lie ahead if this option, this alternative were studied and found to be mutually beneficial for both entities. That concludes my summary of the Village of Lannon's water issue and what lies ahead as our next steps.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from Lisbon?
Well, just to follow up on that, I guess that's what I was attempting to explain earlier, because if they need an interconnect, if we do our own system, we need an interconnect. And so that would both of those solutions benefit both municipalities. Conversely, the study may show that an integrated or joint utility system is ready to go, and we're committee to do that too, if that's what the ultimate determination is. I don't know if the court reporter wants a copy. We talked about a lot of these maps and so on with colors, but I don't know what the preference is.
Just to put this in the record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So, Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
What if the studies show that you should create your system on your own? And then you created a boundary agreement just to do a study that's done, and you didn't,
Well,
you didn't connect together.
I would expect, as I said, I would anticipate that we may be submitting a revised plan. And if the study shows, well, we're going to do our own system, okay? So I think you raise a good point that I think there should be a commitment on the parts of those municipalities that if separate systems are the end result, they will interconnect according to the PSC requirements, so both the concerns of Lannon are satisfied and the concerns of Lisbon. Lisbon is going to go ahead, one is going to go ahead with the system on its own. So, but the first step is to commit to do the study. I understand it's sort of an agreement to agree. Okay, let's be fair. But at the same time, whether you go with the integrated system, a joint utility system, or which is the latter alternative, which is like the 18-month PSC approval process, or separate systems that are integrated, one of those two options will be the end result. And until we get the study done, we don't know which way to go. If it's the opinion of the department, we need a more firm commitment to accept one of those two, be committed to one of those two options. That's something we'll address in the revised plan. Okay? Okay.
I have a question. With sewer and water, is that impacted at all by this comprehensive plan? I mean, excuse me, water obviously is, but what about sewer?
No, both Lannon and Sussex own capacity in the Lannon and Lisbon own capacity in the Sussex plant. And we all jointly own the interceptor from Lannon downtown line to PDP and then into the plant. So any of the sewage that is capacity in the system, both in the plant and in the interceptor coming down, we own separately individually. As a matter of fact, we just upgraded that ownership agreement related to the interceptor to provide for a different sharing and maintenance cost. But there is a four-way agreement on the interceptor: Lannon, Sussex, Lisbon, and the Mountain Falls. And then we are all on individual capacity. So we've got capacity in both the plant and the pipe for the TIP development that we're in the process of doing. But we do need a long-term municipal water system for that development as the rest of the areas. If they're running E. coli tests that high, you can guess that there are others in the area that are going in, because those are caused by the high bedrock. So it's a system, it's an issue that we need to address.
All right, thank you. Village of Lannon? Do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Ben went through covered.
All right, can I ask you then, it just seems, this is a very, this is an agreement between two municipalities for a lot of things for a very, very long period of time. And if the situation comes out, there are 5 different alternatives here. The alternative isn't to, build a system with Lisbon. Why are you in the agreement then? What else are you agreeing to?
Tom would explain, Village President. There's others. The main thing is the water rate now, and I'm pretty sure, I know Ben doesn't want to really commit himself, I'm pretty sure that the emergency interconnect with Lisbon is going to be one of our water things. But there's other things we can do. We could, like with the parks, we're a small municipality, so we could cooperate with back and forth with our parks maintenance. And I know right now we contract with Menominee Falls, but that doesn't mean we couldn't contract with Lisbon. And there's other things. Lisbon has road maintenance equipment. We don't have our own crews on that. So There would be a lot of things, but the main thing right now, what we're doing is the water, that's really critical. There's other things that we would cooperate on.
Yes, it definitely sounds like the water is the key issue, and you're well on your way in developing and analyzing plans on how to solve the problems. Typically, these cooperative plans involve a lot more sharing of services, transferring of boundaries, and whatnot. Because it seems so narrowly focused on just the water issue, you still have some time before you are going to have a solution. I guess I'm kind of curious why you're choosing the 660307 cooperative plan process instead of the 660301 process, which you could do together. It doesn't involve any kind of a state review at all. It's limited to 10 years in term that can be renewed. I guess I'd be kind of curious to hear from you why you opted for this statutory process as opposed to what seems to be a much simpler process for you.
We just thought this is the best way to go. And we're gonna cooperate with a compost site. We aren't large enough to have our own compost over leaves and brush, and there's a lot of other things that we haven't really got into real deep yet. And I'm spending so much time on the water right now because that's really critical. And I'd like to get the cooperative agreement, and then we would nail down the other stuff as we go along and start cooperating more. But I'm just spending, we have so much focus on the water because we have people, and they're I don't know if say lower income, but they're, I forget what the term is, but below the average threshold. It's critical that we get those people on safe water.
And typically in these plans, the 660307, those are detailed, or those issues you're talking about you'll discuss in the future are already nailed down in this plan before the parties come together. So that's why it's confusing. I mean, I understand that the water is the issue. That was made very clear to me. It just seems like that a lot of the details are missing as to some of the other areas in which cooperation would occur.
Okay, yeah, we can get those nailed down pretty quickly. I could spend some more time. I'm far enough along on our water engineering studies and stuff that now I could spend more on the details, but I apologize if I really, what's most important to me is the water.
Yeah, and that's why I asked for why you chose this more complex cooperative plan process where a much simpler general agreement is what we call in the 6601, that you can iron that out and have the comfort that you're going to share some of those expenses to look out for the citizens that truly do have a water issue.
Yeah,
that was my reason for that.
I'm a retired engineer, and I look long term and real big picture, and I felt that this is really the best thing long term. But I have been laser focused on the water and haven't really looked into it. But I'm far enough on the water that I can really spend some time on that in the next couple of days.
All right, thank you. All right, Village of Sussex.
My name is Al Reuter. I'm the attorney representing the Village of Sussex. I want to talk about the legal aspects of the plan, the compliance with the statutes and the approval criteria. The department recently issued a determination in the Lisbon-Lannon cooperative plan, and I have to say I agree with virtually everything that you determined in that determination letter, which was that they did not meet any of the approval criteria. What you have here tonight is essentially the same plan. It's a plan that doesn't have most of the aspects that are required by the statute, and there's clearly nothing that would demonstrate compliance with any of the approval criteria. The first one, of course, is the consistency with the comprehensive plan. Just like the last agreement, they say we've determined it's consistent with our plan with no explanation and no discussion.
I think the department correctly pointed out that affirmations alone are insufficient to enable the department to make a determination. The boundaries that are being selected are basically the boundaries that exist today, and this is a permanent agreement. So what the parties apparently have determined is that the boundaries as they exist today are the boundaries that should exist for the next 10,000 years. But there's no explanation as to why either that boundary is selected or the term of the agreement is proposed to be perpetual. On services, we heard a lot tonight for the first time about all these water issues that are apparently the impetus for this plan. A lot of your questions were questions that I raised as I was listening to the presentation, and that is, why is this not being done under 660301 if it's urgent? And certainly the planning, the studies, and those types of things are commonly done under 660301. You don't need a boundary agreement to do that. But what's important from the standpoint of the cooperative plan is what kind of service are people going to end up with as a result of this plan. And it's important to note that while we've heard tonight that, well, we've got all these different options, and we're going to do one of them, there's nothing in the plan that says that. What the plan says is that they will do a study, and after the study's done, they all get to decide what they want to do, if anything. There's no commitment to do anything in terms of helping Lannon with its water problem. And by the way, a good presentation. I know these issues. I've dealt with them before. Don't disagree with anything that was said by the engineer about the water problems and the need to address them, and the different ways to address them. But this plan doesn't do that. This plan basically says we'll talk about it at some point in the future. And play it by ear is not a plan. And that's what they're proposing to you as a plan. I also want to talk about the process, the 660307 approval process. This is the plan we get to comment on, and that's all we really have. The one thing in the Lisbon-Lannon agreement that I disagreed with was the determination that the plan could be revised to be approvable, and therefore giving them the opportunity to resubmit within 90 days. And it's for the reasons that I explained. By allowing them to resubmit a plan that was woefully inadequate under the statutes, you took away the opportunity for a public hearing on that plan, which would be very different from the original plan. No public hearing that you can hold. You only have 30 days to decide on that plan. And that's what I'm urging you not to do in this case. This is a case where the plan that was submitted has almost no information in it that's helpful. The next plan, if it's in any approvable state, close to being approvable, it will certainly have a lot more information. Yet there's no process for anybody in the public to comment on it. One example of why I think public comment is important is that it came from the Merton Lisbon plan. When they submitted that plan, they included affidavits of mailing of their authorizing resolutions, but they didn't include the list of people they sent it to. That was submitted the day after I commented on it at public hearing in front of you folks that we don't know who they sent these things to, so we don't know if they comply with the law that applies to these plans. Well, we've since had the opportunity to review it and found that they did not send the authorizing resolutions to about half a dozen entities that were entitled to receive that information. So those entities had no ability to participate in the process and no knowledge of the planning process taking place. But that was because the information in the plan that should have been in the plan was submitted after the public hearing. One of those municipalities, by the way, was the village of Lannon. That was not on the list of Lisbon's cooperative plan. So I'm urging you not to fall for the bait and switch that is, whether it's intentional or not, that's essentially what's happening. Any plan can be revised enough that it would be approvable. A blank sheet of paper can be revised into a fully approvable cooperative plan. That's clearly not the standard that the legislature intended. When you have a plan that doesn't meet any of the criteria, because it doesn't have any of the information that the statutes require, that's not a plan. That's not a plan that should be revised. It's a plan that should start over, give all the people who are entitled to participate in the process the opportunity to comment on it, and make an informed decision after getting all the information from all sides. Any questions?
All right, I do have some public testimony slips. If any of you are here or came in late, there are slips on the back table which you can fill out. You can give verbal testimony, or you can just register in favor or in opposition. So please feel free to do that. And if you do have those slips, please feel free to bring them up to me at any time. I was already testified. Bill Lamers, you wish to testify?
My name is Bill Lamers. I know when I came in, I just heard myself here. I thought, oh, I got to make a decision. Where's my deficiency, verbal or written? So I'm not a member of any town position or committee or anything. I live in town Lisbon, and lived here for just about 29 years. And I guess basically, as far as the town matters go, I like to always keep on the minutes of the town board and the town commission and just know what's going on, and not enough to make myself dangerous. And I was just kind of happy. I'm looking, it was fine. Probably everybody. I have over that time, like anybody, if they spent that time, you saw the town would grow. It's gotten a lot bigger. And when I saw okay, we're making an attempt to incorporate it, I thought, well, my view on it, but for what it's worth, is every village and every city was unincorporated at one time. And as they grew, probably you start to pick your own identity, little characteristics, and citizens get together and incorporate it. And then that's sort of, I think, well, that's where we are. I think that Lisbon has, from what I can see, has developed their own identity. And I guess as a citizen, I would like to see us just have that opportunity to vote on whether we want to be incorporated or not. And I other than possibly one exception, I think there's exceptions to communities around us. And I think that the population center certainly has grown west and north and south, and just in the middle of that, still a township. And I just think it's time that we get a chance to vote on and become our own community and control our own destiny.
Just so you know, there is an incorporation process that the town will undertake. So.
Yeah, and when I was listening to all this, I thought, oh no, what have I done for writing all speech? As somebody who just lives here, I'd like to see it.
Thank you. John Garfield? Oh, you want to register? Okay. That's all I have for public testimony slips right now. Jim?
I just want to offer a comment. Just a couple. As far as the alternatives, when this was pointed out, there were 5 alternatives that Lannon looked at. This is the preferable alternative, and that's why this is in his book. Now, I didn't know whether it would be here in Merton tonight, or I would have brought that file. But the bottom line is this. We had a public hearing with the boards. If Sussex had concerns about the content of the plan, they could have come to that public hearing, raised those comments, then we would have been required to revise the plan to address all those comments. They elected not to do so, instead came here tonight. Take that into consideration. We're willing to work with the department to come up with a plan. The fact that other committees may use an 0301 option doesn't mean that this option that we're asking for approval doesn't fit the statute. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it.
As long as you're up there, Jim, one thing I was a little confused about in section 16 related to comments from the county or RPC. I said, no comments were received from the county or RPC, which would have required modification or inclusion.
We have no comments.
So they didn't comment, or their comments were
None. There were no comments
So you reached out to them and
no, well, being, I mean, no public hearing comments, no responses at all. And even if I said the public hearing, there were no comments. And of course, the same situation for the meeting. And I recognize that, that this is a different situation. And if a commitment to build the system and interconnect with Lannon is the firm commitment that is required in order to, because we're going to build a system. The reason it's left open is because we thought it better to let the PSC, who has better knowledge of these things, evaluate the system and tell us whether a joint system or an individual system interconnected is the best alternative for the two communities. Whichever answer is given, that's what we will do.
All right, since we don't have any public testimony slips right now, what we're going to do is we're going to stand informal. So if we do receive some testimony slips, we'll come back and allow that testimony. Otherwise, we'll stand informal until probably about 6 o'clock. And